have current or real-time visual from Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport.
The arrival of the president of OIC, Thomas Bach.
Yeah, who just landed safe and sound at Ngurah Rai International Airport and ready to be welcomed by the minister, Mr. Minister, and then Mr. Iwayan Koster, and also the president of the IOC of Indonesia.
Here is the moment. The president of IOC, Thomas Bach, is stepping out from the car and be welcomed personally
by Mr. Zainuddin Amali, Mr. Minister.
And also the governor of Bali,
Mr. Iwayan Koster, and then the president of IOC of Indonesia. And once again, Mr. President of IOC, Thomas Bach, was invited to come to the G20 summit by Mr. President of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Joko Widodo, to discuss about sports and the world and all of the things related to the sport. And once again, to give a balanced vibe, Mr. President IOC Thomas Bach is welcomed by the one and only traditional Balinese dance. Maybe someday we can learn Balinese traditional dance so we can welcome all the heads of states and also delegates, right?
As per yesterday, Indonesia stated that we are 100% to welcome all the heads of state and to begin the G20 summit here in Bali. And as we can see from yesterday as well, and then all the installations along the road from the Igusti Ngurah Rai Airport to the venues.
Yeah, once again, because we want to give like positive impression to all heads of state and also delegates and participants. So there are a lot of penjor installed stretching from Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport to the venues of G20 summit. Once again, this is the Balinese dancer. And actually, the G20 is the best way to promote our culture, because our motto, unity in diversity, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, is one of the things that we have to promote to the world, that we have really, that we have so many diversity in our nation or country.
Yes, and they're very, very beautiful. Like so many people and so many delegates from the side events, they gave the testimony how beautiful Indonesia is. They were amazed that they had meetings outdoors with a great view that they've never been experienced before.
True, and we hope that the G20 summit will bring them back after the summit, because this is one of the moments that they will remember once in a lifetime.
Yes, for us too.
For us too. And let's continue to our next report. Let's talk about South Korea. South Korea is one of G20 member countries which are expected to take part in the G20 summit in Bali. The following is a brief profile of the country and its bilateral relationship with Indonesia.
South Korea, a country in East Asia, occupies the southern portion of the Korean peninsula. The country is bordered by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea to the north, the East Sea, or Sea of Japan to the east, the East China Sea to the south, and the Yellow Sea to the west. To the southeast, it is separated from the Japanese island of Tsushima by the Korea Strait. According to United Nations projections, the current population of South Korea in 2022 is over 51 million people, or 0.05% increase from 2021. South Korea's economy was still one of the fastest growing developed countries in the 2000s, along with Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan. They are the three Asian tigers. The nation's economy is heavily dependent on international trade, and in 2014, South Korea was the fifth largest exporter and seventh largest importer in the world for high technology industries, for automobiles, electronics, and information technologies. For the future, the Korean government considers the entertainment and media industry as a key driver of national economy. With the world under the Korean wave of Hallyu fever, South Korea has backed profit for the entertainment industry. In 2021, the total value of Korean music market was estimated to reach $6 billion. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism and Korea Culture and Tourism conducted a joint study that showed the revenue generated by K-pop group BTS hit song will be able to provide approximately 8,000 jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic. The South Korean government's structure is determined by the Constitution of the Republic of Korea. Like many democratic states, South Korea has a government divided into three branches: executive, judicial, and legislative. The executive and legislative branches operate primarily at the national level, although various ministries in the executive branch also carry out local functions. Currently, South Korea is led by Yoon Suk-yeol of the People Power Party as the 13th president of the nation. Yoon was born in Seoul in 1960. After graduating from Chongham High School, he studied law at Seoul National University. Yoon started his career at Daegu Public Prosecutor's Office in 1994. In January 2002, Yoon worked briefly as a lawyer at Bai, Kim, and Lee, but left as he felt that he was not suited to the position. On June 29, 2021, Yoon officially announced his candidacy in the 2022 presidential election. On July 12th, he registered with the National Election Commission as an independent candidate. Yoon Suk-yeol leaving the People Power Party headquarters shortly after joining the party on July 30th, 2021, and officially joined the Conservative People Power Party. On November 5th, 2021, Yoon officially won the nomination of the People Power Party for the 2022 presidential election. And on March 9th, Yoon narrowly won the presidential election and later assumed office on May 10th, 2022. In 2022, the diplomatic relations between the Republic of Indonesia and the Republic of Korea will mark its 49th year. The diplomatic relations between the two countries was established in September 1973, but a consular-level relationship had already begun from August 1966. The relations and cooperation at bilateral level entered a new phase on the state visit of the President of the Republic of Korea, Moon Jae-in, to Indonesia on November 8 to 10 in 2017. Two leaders agreed to elevate the bilateral relations to a special strategic partnership through the Korea-Indonesia Joint Vision Statement for Co-Prosperity and Peace, which focuses on defense and foreign affairs, bilateral trade and infrastructure development, people-to-people exchanges, and regional and global cooperation. South Korea is one of the most strategic investor countries for Indonesia. The country's foreign direct investment up to the third quarter of 2022 ranks 7th at $1.67 billion versus $1.33 billion for the same period last year. In 2021, the trade value of goods between Indonesia and South Korea grew 37.8% over the previous year to $18.4 billion. In the same year, Indonesia posted a trade deficit with South Korea of $446.72 million, higher than $341.8 million in the previous year. The export value of Indonesian goods to South Korea grew 38% to $8.98 billion in 2021 from the previous year. On the other hand, the value of imported goods increased 37.63% to $9.42 billion at the same time.
In November this year, Indonesia will host the 17th meeting of Group of 20 in Bali, the G20. And it's one of the world's largest economies that holds a strategic role in securing future global economic growth and prosperity.
And this is the profile of the European Union, one of the G20 members.
The European Union, or EU, is an organization of European countries which aims to oversee their economic and political integration. The EU began when the first steps were made to foster economic cooperation, that the countries which traded with one another become economically interdependent and so more likely to avoid conflict. The result was the European Economic Community, created in 1958 with the initial aim of increasing economic cooperation between 6 countries: Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Since then, 22 more countries joined, and a huge single market, which is also known as the internal market, has been created and continues to develop towards its full potential. Officially formed in November 1993 in Maastricht of the Netherlands, and now the EU comprises of 27 members after the United Kingdom left the organization in 2020. The member countries are Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, the Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden. The members benefit from a single European market, like a free trade zone, the free movement of people, goods, services, and money throughout the EU bloc, and regional development funds, which help poor regions develop infrastructure and technologies to compete in a global economy. This makes the European Union a unique governing body and the world's first supranational organization. The EU has delivered more than half a century of peace, stability, and prosperity, helped raise living standards, and launched a single European currency, the euro. More than 340 million EU citizens in 19 countries now use it as their currency and enjoy its benefits. In 2012, the EU was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for advancing the causes of peace, reconciliation, democracy, and human rights in Europe. In terms of governance systems, the EU has 3 main institutions which have distinct roles. The 3 bodies include the European Parliament, the European Council, and the European Commission. The European Parliament is the principal democratic component of the EU system, composed of members directly elected by Europeans. Its job is to bring the concerns and priorities of European citizens into the system and to represent their political views in accordance with the outcome of the elections. The Council of Ministers is the institution representing the governments of EU countries in the EU system, composed of the relevant national ministers for the subject under discussion. And the European Commission is the executive of the EU system, which is responsible for proposing new EU laws to the Parliament and the Council for implementing those laws once passed. The current president of the European Parliament is Roberta Metsola from Malta, who was elected early this year and will serve until the next election in 2024. The current president of the European Council is Belgian politician Charles Michel. He started his first term on December the 1st, 2019. On 24th of March 2022, he was re-elected president for a second term of 2.5 years. And the president or the head of the European Commission is currently Ursula von der Leyen, a German politician who has been serving as the president of the European Commission since 2019 until 2024. In the G20 membership, the EU enjoys status of the permanent member as the only former member being a regional organization. For the leader summits, the president of the European Commission and the European Council formed a single delegation to represent the European Union. Both of Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel are scheduled to attend the G20 summit in Bali 2022. The EU and Indonesia have a long-standing relationship which is underpinned by the shared values of democracy, human rights, and diversity. For over 30 years, cooperation between the EU and Indonesia has been rooted in shared objectives towards sustainable development, with the UN 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals as the current common framework. This year marks Indonesia's G20 presidency, and the EU supports Indonesia's priorities on global health, digital transformation, and sustainable energy transition. In June 2021, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell Fontelles, met with the President Joko Widodo to reaffirm the EU's continuous commitment to work together to shape a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient global economy. The two sides are working on a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, or CEPA, between the EU and Indonesia to increase cooperation opportunities and promote a sustainable relationship in economic, social, and environmental terms. Both sides are also engaged in the green transition that focuses on finding sustainable solutions, advancing technological innovation, and supporting capacity building and investment in green technology. In recent years, the EU has also included Indonesia in its Global Solidarity Program in facing the global challenges, which is in line with the theme of Indonesia's G20 presidency in 2022, Recover Together, Recover Stronger.
Yes, indeed, recover together, recover stronger. That's why it is a very, very important, like the global issues that we are facing right now in the Russian and Ukraine.
Ooh, the tension is so high.
Yes, and I believe the discussion will be put on the table tomorrow as one of the most important things to discuss between the world leaders. And
because this geopolitical tension affects many sectors, from global food security, and then became one of main priority issues that I assume will be brought on the table at the 2-day meeting at the G20 summit.
Yes, and both leaders from Russia and Ukraine will not be attending the summit, but we will see how the meeting will go tomorrow.
Yeah, but under Indonesia's presidency, of course, Mr. President of the Republic of Indonesia, Joko Widodo, has invited the president of Russia and also Ukraine to attend to the G20 summit. But unfortunately, to secure all the things going on in Bali, they decided to join and to attend the meeting virtually.
Yes. And I believe we will be joined with the expert on this matter. This is His Excellency Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi.
Yes,
the former Indonesian ambassador to Russia.
He is former Indonesian ambassador to Russia. Good morning. Hello, sir.
Good morning. Could you hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes, of course, clearly.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Your Excellency, you were the Indonesian ambassador to Russia, and as we know, Russia is a key player in G20 and has confirmed that its president, Vladimir Putin, will not participate in the summit, but he will attend virtually. And as mentioned, Russia will be like, could you provide an estimate of Russia's significance in G20 economically and politically?
Well, thank you. This is quite a difficult time for Indonesia to organize such a big summit, yeah, because it covers the 20 biggest economy in the world, you know? And the absence of Russia, of course, is one not unfortunate. Unfortunate thing about it to Indonesia. But first, I could mention that in the member of G20, we talk about the nominal GDP. Russia ranked number 15 in the world, but for PPP in the standard, Russia number 6, and then Indonesia number 7. But if we look at the geography, Russia is the biggest country in the world. Yeah, almost half of the continent belong to Russia. And also, just got the information recently that in terms of the natural resources value, actually Russia is impressive. It's number 1 in the world with the value of natural resources amounted to $75 trillion. This is compared to US on the 45.7 trillion, Saudi 34.4, and Canada 33.2. And in terms of the global power index, Russia is only behind US, so number 2. So you cannot ignore the potential of Russia as one of the big power in the world at the current situation.
All right. So as you mentioned earlier, that we cannot ignore Russia will give any kinds of impacts and also effect on the G20 summit. But sir, Your Excellency, Russian President Vladimir Putin's absence from the G20 summit will certainly affect the decision and policy making processes in the summit. What is your analysis into it?
Well, it will not be a perfect summit, but we cannot blame Indonesia, because this is behind the capacity of Indonesia. I think Indonesia has been doing very well in organizing the event, involving 20 biggest economy, but so far 17 leaders have been confirmed to come to the event. And Russia, as we know, will not be coming. As I mentioned, it will not be perfect. But the best we can do is how to make this G20 successful, and without, of course, the physical presence of President Putin. But of course, Russia is represented by Foreign Minister Lavrov. I think he's one of, or maybe the one that has the longest job in his portfolio, some 18 years. So it's very experience on an international event, and I noticed that he has been representing Putin on many different occasions on the summit level. It will not come with like a joint communique, because a communique should be approved by all the members. But the best thing we can do is a Chairman statement by Indonesia. With the substance of all the discussion raised during the meeting. So it will not be easy for Indonesia, but so far I think Indonesia has been doing the best thing to make it successful.
Yes, as President Jokowi also has made like a lot of efforts to actually bring Putin and also Zelensky to the G20 summit here in Bali. But even though that they are not be attending physically, we are pretty curious. Like there's no certain explanation on why Putin is not coming. And the media reports have mentioned that Putin's absence is due to domestic problems that he has to resolve at the moment. Could you figure out what the Russian domestic problems are? Do they have anything to do with the latest development in the Russian-Ukraine war, or with Russian domestic political and security affairs that they are currently having at the moment?
Well, certainly the popularity of Putin is declining. If I look at the polling or survey taken by Levada Center, so this is the most independent and sponsored by United States or funded by United States. With the announcement of partial military decree on the 21st of October, the popularity of Putin down 6 points to 77% from 83. So it means still very high. Yeah, the popularity of Putin is high with 70%, 77%. But if I talk to the ordinary people in Russia and also some businessmen coming to Indonesia for G20, for example, certainly among the ordinary people there is some difficulties, but the economy is still there. But don't forget that Putin still loved by the majority of the people. If you look at his achievement, for example, from 2000, when he took power from Yeltsin. And under Yeltsin, the economy has plummeted, and Russia becoming the segment in Europe. Even people were queuing just to get bread. Now, but 6 years, from the first 6 years, from 2006, if I look at the book written percent, and on the IMF debt, around paid off, yeah, and then debt to GDP from 130 down to 18%, and the per capita raised to around 10,000 at the time. So people remember the hardness during Yeltsin, and he remembered the success story done by Putin, despite the fact that he often have negative actions against his opponents, and he did not let the freedom of the press, for example. But people, I think, enjoyed the prosperity during Putin era. So that's why even up to now, the popularity of Putin is still high.
All right, Your Excellency, the European Council has announced that it will raise the Ukraine-Russia war issue at the G20 summit. What will likely happen in the summit forum should the EC continue with the plan? And what is the best and the worst thing that we can expect from the summit and also from the Ukraine-Russia war issue at the G20 summit?
Well, for sure, Russia will object to this issue. But I think because all the decisions should be approved by all members, so it will not be easy as well for the G20 to put the issue on the table. It could be put on the table, but I don't think that it will come to a joint communique because, of course, Russia will object it.
All right, meaning that all of the delegates and also all of the heads of state have to must agree first about the theme of Ukraine-Russia war issue that will be brought to the table at the G20 summit.
Yeah, it is in the rights of every member to raise the issues. I think the European countries, US will raise the issue, but whether the issue will be included in the joint communique is a different story.
Yeah, so do you think that there will not be a joint communique regarding this matter?
Yes, I think so. As I mentioned, it's difficult because all the decision on joint communique should be based on consensus. And certainly Russia will object it. Yeah. So I think the best we can achieve is, a joint statement. Yeah, but G20 is not only about G2G. Yeah? There are side events which I think Indonesia could play more a significant role, and it will bring to more benefit, especially in the term of economy, investment, and trade. As we know that there are many working groups. I can't remember all, but I think there are some working groups on think tank, religion, environment, digital economy, agriculture, education, energy transition, tourism, and so on. So we could take the benefit of this apart from the G2G, because all the businessmen also coming in Bali, including I know some Russians with ANO, and they even participate at the Trade Expo Indonesia. So I talk to them, and they think they now getting aware of the potential of Indonesia. We are the only country, or not the only, but maybe about 5 countries only that economic growth by more than 5% this year, 2022. So they know the potentials, and they come even earlier. And I'm optimistic from Russian point of view, from business people, for example. There'll be growing numbers of Russian business coming to Indonesia. And I just came back to Bali some weeks ago, and I was told by the Honorary Consul that in the last one, all traffic airlines from Middle East, there are 3 airlines from Middle East, Etihad, Emirates, and Qatar Airways, and Turkish Airways. They always fully booked the whole month. So registered now around 1,700 Russian stay permanently in Bali, but the newcomers are growing. I don't know whether this is one of the effect of the partial mobilization decree that issued by President Putin on the 21st of October last month. Yeah.
All right. Your Excellency, we all know that Mr. President Vladimir Putin and also Mr. Zelensky will attend, and confirmed that will attend to the G20 summit virtually. Can we expect like a meeting, a virtual meeting from Mr. President of Russia, and then Mr. Zelensky, and then maybe from G20 member states at the G20 summit? And how do you see on this matter?
Well, what I read yesterday from the spokesperson that even the Russian president will not come virtually. I don't know if there is any new development, but I think this is about reciprocal basis. If President Zelensky will appear virtually, I think President Putin will do also.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I would like to highlight, you state that you are still optimistic about the bilateral relation that can make the world or the situation better, not only here in the G20, maybe it can start here at the G20 summit, but then after that, it can be like an ongoing discussion, and how it depends on the progress as well. How do you analyze? Do you have any analyzations about this matter? Like, because you are optimistic that it will happen, maybe because of the President Jokowi, maybe the on the peace mission between Russia and Ukraine. Can that work out?
Well, you're talking about the bilateral relation, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, personally, President Putin has made a very close relationship with President Jokowi. I was there in Sochi, April 2016, and although this is the first visit by President Jokowi, but they met on several occasions. And from what I see, Putin has made it clear that Indonesia is our true friend. This is what he said. And he reminded of the history, last history about Soviet role in the early independence. And personally, they also are very close. So far, even after the second visit of President Jokowi, they made twice a telephone call. This is only for eyes, and this reflects how close they are. Even during the first meeting in Sochi, this is also according to my friend, local Russian and local media. This is the first time that Putin was laughing, openly, because of jokes made by President Jokowi. There are pictures on that. And in terms of trade, for example, there is an encouraging side. During the visit by President Jokowi in August, President Putin clearly mentioned that during the difficult time, the pandemic, the economy, the trade relation between Russia and Indonesia grew by 40.6%. 40.6% is a big number. And what is the positive thing about Indonesia? we enjoy the surplus of 1.9 billion US dollar. Yeah, not many country that Indonesia enjoyed that big surplus, and even during the first semester, the economy even grew by 60%. So this is very encouraging sign for our trade relation. Not to mention also on investment. The number of business people from Russia who are interested in investing in Indonesia is getting bigger and bigger. Although some has to be delayed. For example, by big investment by the Russian railway in East Kalimantan, because they would like to participate at the new capital, KN, in Kalimantan, because they have the interest in Kalimantan. So they may develop this kind of investment from initially for coal transport only, maybe to passengers. So now they're trying to modify what kind of investment, especially infrastructure. Russia is very interested in infrastructure, smart city in the new capital.
All right, Your Excellency, in terms of bilateral relations, could you elaborate to us about geopolitical tension that is happening right now in the world, and what kind of impact that Indonesia will get in terms of the geopolitical tension?
Well, it is interesting. Only a few weeks ago, PT Indexim Kualindo, a coal mining company, organized a webinar, and there were two prominent speakers from Indonesia, former Minister Khatib Basri and Raden Pardede, who talk about the impact of the war to Indonesia. Yeah. One of the positive things he mentioned that Indonesia will still grow by 5.2% this year. The worst scenario, it still can grow by 4%. But looking back to the recent report by Indonesian Statistics Agency BPS, the third quarter Indonesian economy grew by 5.7%. So 5.2% is easy to reach. So I think this is in terms of the economy. Of course, there are some negative thing about the impact of the war to Indonesia. One is the less competitiveness of our export because of the strengthening of dollar and so on. So we are hoping that the war could soon end, but of course, this is not easy. It will not be going to end in a very short time. So according to the theory of war, the war could end when one of both of them economically collapse, and then there will be negotiation. And still far from collapse. Russian economy is still strong, despite the fact that it will grow by minus 3%. But don't forget that Russia also got the benefit of the war. According to one research agency, in Russia, since the war, has a windfall profit of 158 billion euro. Mind you, it's a big money. While European and the biggest destination for export is European Union, but now European Union will be suffering, especially during the winter. So it will not end in this short time. While Ukraine theoretically it's bankrupt, but it is supported by the Western countries led by US. What I read, some 13 billion has been bought to Ukraine. So up to now, still very hard to predict when the war ends, because both sides, still have strong stand on their own. So it will not be easy.
This discussion is getting interesting. Getting more interesting, like as Mr. Wahid just said, that it cannot be predicted. But if the war ends, that means world peace as well. And President Joko Widodo, on a peace mission, met with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Under tight security, President Jokowi took the journey between the two countries via Poland.
Yeah, and President Jokowi offered to pass a message from Zelensky to Putin during a meeting in Kiev on Wednesday, June 29, 2022, in an attempt to raise hopes for peace. The following is President Joko Widodo's journey with his entourage on a world peace mission. Let's have a look.
Kunjungan ini saya lakukan sebagai manifestasi kepedulian Indonesia terhadap situasi di Ukraina. Dengan kemampuan yang ada, rakyat dan pemerintah Indonesia berusaha memberikan kontribusi bantuan termasuk obat-obatan dan komitmen rekonstruksi salah satu rumah sakit di sekitar Kiev.
Dengan bismillah saya mendampingi Bapak, moga-moga peperangan ini segera berakhir. Karena sangat merinding saya lihat.
Isu perdamaian dan kemanusiaan selalu menjadi prioritas politik luar negeri Indonesia. Konstitusi Indonesia mengamanatkan agar Indonesia selalu berusaha berkontribusi bagi terciptanya perdamaian dunia. Indonesia tidak memiliki kepentingan apapun kecuali ingin melihat perang dapat segera selesai dan rantai pasok pangan, pupuk, energi dapat segera diperbaiki karena ini menyangkut kehidupan ratusan juta orang bahkan miliaran manusia. Saya mengajak seluruh pemimpin dunia untuk bekerja sama kembali menghidupkan semangat multilateralisme, semangat damai dan semangat kerjasama. Hanya dengan spirit itulah perdamaian dapat dicapai.
And what you just saw was a world peace mission done by the Mr. President of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. President Joko Widodo. And still joining us now virtually, His Excellency Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi. Your Excellency, you're still there, right?
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's continue to talk about Russia and also global politics. The Russia-Ukraine war, which was triggered by Russia's invasion on Ukraine on 24 February of this year, has drawn widespread condemnations across the globe. But Russia remains steadfast in its position. The reason for Russia's invasion, of course, must not be single and simple. In your opinion, observations, and perspective, what are the reasons?
Well, you're right. War could not happen for simple thing. For Russia, it was about sovereignty. You remember that in 1990, Foreign Minister James Baker met Gorbachev, Soviet leaders at the time. And he promised that NATO would not extend to the east. And the following year, there was a meeting of Director General of NATO responsible for politics. And it was also revealed that the Director General for NATO also promised Russian side that NATO will not extend to the east. Of course, we know what happened after that. Poland, Hungary, and then also other former Soviet republics like Lithuania, Latvia, and so on, and finally joined NATO. But then one thing that President Putin or Russia would not tolerate, in the three buffer states joining NATO, the three buffer states are Georgia, Belarus, already pro-Russia, and then Ukraine. I remember that 2008. There is a similar happening with Ukraine and Turkey, where the two southern part of Georgia was about to separate. And then that is the reason that Russian president at the time, I think it's Medvedev, came to Georgia. I think the main reason is not about the two Southern Republic, but it is about Georgia wanted to join NATO. And again happened to Ukraine, when the Donetsk and Luhansk also tried to separate Ukraine, and this is the reason for Russia to join to invade the Ukraine. If Ukraine and Georgia becoming or joining NATO, it will like the deployment of military equipment in front of Russian doorstep. So this is a threat to Russia. Give me example like we know Singapore is very close to the West, but if Singapore declared to join NATO, which is very unlikely, of course there will be reaction from Malaysia and Indonesia, because this is about sovereignty. I don't think that we will let any military pact or military deployment in our doorstep. So this is about sovereignty, and if something to do with the sovereignty, the war could not be avoided. So this is the main reason why Russian president confirmed up today. For me, it is simple but not easy to solve. Once President Zelensky mentioned, okay, we will not join NATO, and then NATO said, okay, for the moment at least we will leave it Ukraine as it is, and the war will stop. Of course, as I mentioned, it's not easy. Remember during the third week of the war, there has been 2 negotiations, and actually Zelensky is already close to recognize the main problem, that is joining NATO, and he's thinking of not joining NATO at the time. But then of course there is pressure from US, and then the sending of military weapons to Ukraine and so on, and the war becoming bigger and bigger, as we know, still happen up to now. Although Russian has also got a setback from the war, with the sink of his warship, in Black Sea, and also recent destroyed by the recent bridge connecting Crimea destroyed by Ukraine military forces.
So we may say that Russia's invasion on Ukraine come from a really long history, not only from...
Yes. The both countries actually the same nation in the beginning. If you look at the history of Russia, founded by Rurik the Rus in the 9th century, and after that the capital moved from Novgorod to Kiev. And you know that the former 2 great leaders of Soviet Union coming from Ukraine, Khrushchev and Brezhnev, they are Ukrainian. And Gorbachev wife, sorry, not wife, but Gorbachev mother is Ukraine. I make an analogy. This is like Malaysia and Indonesia. We are brothers, but we had also confrontation during Sukarno era. So they used to speak the same language, the same capital. Of course, after some long history of war and the occupation of Mongols, there are some differences between the two. But during the Soviet Union, they become the same big country, and some leadership even coming from Ukraine.
All right. Your Excellency, we have to hold our discussion for a moment, since we will connect to our reporter that will give the latest updates. But before, that was interesting. Explanation about Russia's invasion on Ukraine, about sovereignty.
Yeah, because do you know that it's actually today on the 14th of November, it's already day 264. So it's almost a year that it's been happening. So since the first invasion by Russia to Ukraine, it has made a global impact, especially in food security and, of course, a geopolitical tension around the world. And also, Mr. Wahid explained to us and go back with the history how it all started as well in 1990, where there was a unsigned agreement between the Russia and the US to expand the continents. Do you think like this invasion is we cannot call it it's justified, but why did Russia proceed with the invasion from your perspective, Your Excellency?
Yeah, well, just before that, I also mentioned, I should note to mention that by 2002, Russia joined the Russian NATO Council. So actually, there was a goodwill from Russian side, to work together with NATO. Even in 1991, the former President Boris Yeltsin, Boris Yeltsin is the most liberal leader in Soviet Union, wrote a letter to the Secretary General of NATO that Russia would like to join NATO, and it was refused. So the NATO actually is created during the Cold War period between fight between capitalism and communism, and communism is not there anymore. So what is the point of NATO? And then NATO extended. So that was regarded as aggressive, action by NATO against Russia. Okay, back to your question. As I mentioned, this is about the sovereignty issue. Russia does not mind if Ukraine join European Union, and President Putin, for himself, made it clear many times that they don't mind. But not NATO. NATO means a military pact. It is a threat to our sovereignty.
Okay.
Okay. And joining us live, once again, Your Excellency, we have to hold our discussion a bit because we are now joined by our TVRI World reporter, Muhammad Arif Ismail, that will be delivered the latest updates of G20. Arif? All right. Arif, good morning. Please continue with your report.
Right. I'm here standing in front of Ngurah Rai International Airport, Bali, and I'll bring you some updates on the arrival of head of states and also the international institution for G20 summit. But before that, I can tell you that the access in here is not as tight as the arrival of President Joko Widodo and Joe Biden, the President of the United States, last night. Today, the press with the official ID is allowed to get into the airport and having access on it. The president of IOC, International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, is set to arrive at Ngurah Rai International Airport at 10:35 Central Indonesia time. Following his arrival is the Prime Minister of Netherlands, Mark Rutte, at 11:30. And we will also soon seeing the presence of President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, alongside the Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of United Arab Emirates, that is predicted to arrive at around 1 p.m. Xi Jinping, the President of China, and his spouse is scheduled to arrive at 3:20 p.m. The President of China's delegate is considered important in this G20 summit, as this country is heavily involved in business and industries sectors that has been the main theme of this time's G20 summit in Nusa Dua, Bali, Indonesia. Muhammad Arif Ismail and Arya reporting live from Ngurah Rai International Airport. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Muhammad Arif, for the report. We look forward for more reports from you. So stay tuned only on TVRI World. And now we are going to be back to our discussion with His Excellency Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi, the former Indonesian ambassador to Russia. We were talking about the Russia and global politics, especially in terms of the Russian-Ukraine invasion that still going on up to this day. And apart from defending itself for the invasion on Ukraine, His Excellency, as already reported in the media, Russia and or Putin has issued counter agreements justifying its invasion on Ukraine by striking back what the US had done in Iraq and Afghanistan, which were each essentially an invasion. And how do you view such counter arguments?
Well, exactly. According to international law, a country could invade to other countries based on two things. One is based on the mandate of the UN Security Council, and second for self-defense. According to some notes, US has invaded some 52 countries without the mandate of the UN, and they may say that it is self-defense, but how could we believe that US invaded Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and so on from the self-defense? And the word was quite on that. I don't mean to justify the war, but this is the rationale, the real politics. It is not a good precedent for other countries. Can we say that if you are strong, you can invade other countries for the sake of your self-defense? I don't think we can do that. So this is the rationale behind Russia's statement on that issue. As I mentioned, this could not be justified because our constitution clearly that we are against any kind of colonization. We are against any kind of domestic intervention in other countries.
All right, Your Excellency, we are also looking forward to know more about, well, actually, basically, what is the best solution to end the war? But before, we are going to give you the country profile of Russia.
Russia is located partly in Eastern Europe and partly in North Asia. It borders the Arctic Ocean to the north, the Bering Sea, and the Sea of Okhotsk in the east. Russia has land borders with 14 countries: Azerbaijan, Belarus, China, Estonia, Finland, Georgia, Kazakhstan, North Korea, Latvia, Lithuania, Mongolia, Norway, Poland, and Ukraine. It shares maritime borders with Japan, Sweden, Turkey, and the United States. Russia's territory covers an area of 17,098,242 square kilometers, approximately 11% of the Earth's landmass, making it the largest country in the world by area. It is more than twice the size of the contiguous United States. However, large parts of Russia are uninhabitable because of permafrost, or soil that remains frozen throughout the year, and is unsuitable for agriculture, covers more than 60% of Russia's territory. Russia is a country with a low population density, 8 people per square kilometer, compared with Germany with 226 people per square kilometer, and the US about 33 people per square kilometer. Russia has a population of 145.8 million people in 2021. It is ranked 9th in the top 10 most populous countries, but is plagued with a drastic population decline since the 1990s. The capital and largest city is Moscow, the core of political power and the center of culture and trade. St. Petersburg, the former imperial capital, is Russia's second largest city and an important Russian port on the Baltic Sea. Vladimir Putin was born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, Russia, USSR, now St. Petersburg, Russia. Putin got law degree from the Leningrad State University in 1975. He joined the intelligence service and served 15 years as a foreign intelligence officer for the KGB, Committee for State Security. In 1990, he retired from the active KGB service with the rank of lieutenant colonel and returned to Russia to become pro-rector of Leningrad State University. Soon afterward, Putin became an advisor to Anatoly Sobchak, mayor of St. Petersburg. By 1994, Putin had risen to the post of first deputy mayor. In 1996, Putin moved to Moscow, where he joined the presidential staff as deputy to Pavel Borodin, Kremlin's chief administrator. In July 1998, President Boris Yeltsin made Putin director of the Federal Security Service, or FSB, KGB's domestic successor, and shortly thereafter he became secretary of the influential Security Council. Later on, Yeltsin appointed Putin prime minister in 1999. On December 31st, 1999, Yeltsin announced his resignation and named Putin acting president. Putin won the March 2000 presidential election, securing 53% of the vote. He was re-elected in March 2004 and served until 2008. Under a constitutional provision that bars a third consecutive term of presidency, Putin did not contest the March 2008 presidential election, which was won by Dmitry Medvedev. Soon after Medvedev won the 2008 election, Putin announced that he had accepted the position of chairman of the United Russia Party. Medvedev nominated Putin as the country's prime minister within hours of taking office on May 7, 2008. Russia's parliament confirmed the appointment the following day.
И прежде всего хочу поблагодарить всех вас. Коллеги, Владимир Владимирович, график, как всегда, напряженный, поэтому давайте...
Medvedev announced in September 2011 that he and Putin would trade positions. Putin contested and won the March 4, 2012 presidential election. He was inaugurated as president for a third term on May 7, 2012. Putin was re-elected for a fourth term in the 2018 election and will serve as president until 2024. Bilateral relations between Indonesia and Russia dated back to the colonial era. In the 19th century, Imperial Russian maritime expeditions started visiting the archipelago. In 1806, two sailing ships, the Nadezhda and the Neva, engaged in the first Russian circumnavigation of the Earth and approached the shores of Indonesia. Russia established in 1894 its first full-time consulate in Batavia, the capital of the Dutch East Indies. The Soviet Union established diplomatic relations with Indonesia in 1950 and is one of the first countries to recognize Indonesia's sovereignty and independence from the Dutch after the end of World War II. Early in the Cold War, both countries had close relations with Indonesian President Sukarno visiting Moscow and subsequently Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev visiting Jakarta. The Soviet Union helped Indonesia build the Persahabatan Hospital and the Gelora Bung Karno Stadium, as well as transport and industrial infrastructure facilities that are in operation to this day. It was during Khrushchev's leadership that loan was dispersed for Indonesian military buildup that led to Indonesia's military supremacy in Asia in the 1960s. As Suharto rose to presidency, relations between the two states deteriorated, but diplomatic relations were not suspended. President Suharto visited the Soviet Union for the first time in 1989, coinciding with events leading to the fall of communism in Europe. The USSR under Mikhail Gorbachev began to develop closer ties with Indonesia alongside other Southeast Asian countries. Under Boris Yeltsin and later Vladimir Putin, relations were generally stable and continued to the present. In 2000, Indonesia-Russia cooperation relation entered a new phase and experienced a significant increase. In political field, the first meeting since the reform era in Indonesia and the Russian Federation era was carried out by President Abdurrahman Wahid and President Vladimir Putin. President Megawati Sukarno Putri in 2001 began to stretch Indonesia-Russia relations. President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono discussed the follow-up in the purchase of Russian warplanes. President Joko Widodo and Russian President Vladimir Putin held several limited meetings. The USSR under Mikhail Gorbachev began to develop closer ties with Indonesia alongside other Southeast Asian countries. Under Boris Yeltsin and later Vladimir Putin, relations were generally stable and continued to the present. In 2000, Indonesia-Russia cooperation relation entered a new phase and experienced a significant increase. In political field, the first meeting since the reform era in Indonesia and the Russian Federation era was carried out by President Abdurrahman Wahid and President Vladimir Putin. President Megawati Sukarno Putri in 2001 began to stretch Indonesia-Russia relations. President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono discussed the follow-up in the purchase of Russian warplanes. President Joko Widodo and Russian President Vladimir Putin held several limited meetings.
From Indonesia for a better world.
As the world's economy is still strongly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia, holding the 2022 G20 presidency, encourages world countries to work together to achieve a stronger and more sustainable world recovery. Recover together, recover stronger.
The three main pillars of Indonesia's presidency for the G20 throughout 2022 are namely global health architecture, sustainable energy transition, and digital transformation, with the strategic goal to achieve a developed and a more prosperous global economy in the future.
Be the witness to a series of historical events across the nation.
As we present to you Indonesia's presidency leading to the G20 summit, only on
TVI World. We're covered together. We're covered stronger.
You are still watching Hello G20 from TVRI World's mini studio still with us, of course. And we are going to look forward to more visual from the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport to know more about the arrival of heads of state and also leaders of international organizations that are scheduled to be landed at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport today.
Yes, we are ready to welcome all the heads of states and also delegates from the G20 countries member and also the invitees.
The invitees that was invited by Mr. President of the Republic of Indonesia, Joko Widodo. And what you are seeing now, we are still figuring out who is the heads of state that just landed at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport. Yeah, and the airport itself, the security is really tight. So from what we know so far, there are about 9,000 police and also 18,000 TNI or National Army that were involved to secure the event of the 20th summit held in Bali tomorrow and the next day.
Yes, we have the information that the schedule of arrivals from the heads of state today are from Cambodia, Turkey, Senegal, Australia, Canada, Argentina. But before that, before we figure out who just landed at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport and ready to be welcomed to join the G20 summit that will be starting tomorrow on November 15th and will end on November 16th. We will talk more on the hottest issue that has been happening and that has been a talk of the town, talk of the global of the world for the past almost a year now. It's about the Russian-Ukraine invasion. And joining us live via Zoom, His Excellency Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi, the former Indonesian ambassador to Russia. So we'll get back to, and we will get more in depth on that.
Okay, Your Excellency, the question before we decided to postpone the answer. So what is the best way or what are the best solutions to end the Russia and also Ukrainian war? What is your perspective or what is your thought on that?
Well, I've been 34 years serving at foreign ministry. For diplomat, the best way is negotiation. That's all. Of course, it's not easy, as I mentioned in the beginning. The war still be there for a couple of months, maybe a year, we don't know. But it's interesting. If I look at a book written by Christopher Bladman, Why We Fight: The Roots of War and the Path to Peace. I quoted in the beginning that the war would end only if one or both sides suffered economically, and to outcome the outburst of unhappiness in their domestic country, the one way is to negotiate. Yeah, usually the winner will dictate the others. So far, as I mentioned, still a long way to go. Yeah, the economy of Russia, although it will be contracted to -3, and independent observer predicted -6, but the foreign reserves still very big in Russia. As I mentioned, Russia got windfall profit of $158 billion US, for selling oil and gas, and mostly to European countries so far. Well, Ukraine is still there because of the support of the West. So up to now, I don't see there is any possible way to negotiate, because either side is still strong with their own basic position. But it is not impossible, of course, to start negotiating, but it will involve big power, NATO should be involved. Otherwise, if there's no also changes in the position of NATO and Western country, of course, it will on making the war longer. So that's my perception.
Okay.
Yes.
Regarding to the solution, should we involve other countries, maybe like the United States of America, or maybe the G20 member states in particular, or maybe this is only for Russia and also Ukraine to end the war?
Yes, because you just mentioned as well, it will involve the big countries to start maybe the negotiation, the peace negotiation, even though you were saying that it's still a long way to go. But at the same time, you also said that you are optimistic that it will happen eventually. So what is the solution? Are there any solutions?
Well, number one is between Russia and Ukraine. I hope both countries will come to terms for practical solution. Yeah, because in the end, the war will make that people suffering. Even Russia, I heard from friends also, although they are not very much devastated in the economy, but it's a fact on daily life. I think the same thing happened much worse is in Ukraine. Yeah. And second is the involvement of international participants. Number one, of course, is the United Nations. And this could be bridged, the two countries could be bridged by the third party, which is neutral. Well, number one, Indonesia could be in that position because we have good relations with all countries involved. We have good relations with Russia, we have good relations with Ukraine, and also with the West and the United States, also with the UN. So Indonesia is also in a good position. Number two is Turkey. Not Turkey, although theoretically a member of NATO, but Turkey refused to give sanction to Russia. And now the relation between Turkey and Russia even stronger. Recently Putin agreed to stop the blockage of export of grain, not grain, what do you call it, fertilizer and wheat, grain, sorry. And this is partly, of course, the role of Turkey and also Indonesia. When President Jokowi, remember in August last year, also he made it clear about food security, and Russia agreed. And even recently, with the point of the commodity involved or added, like fertilizer, because this is something to do with food security. And even up to now, as far as I know, the United States still import fertilizer from Russia. Yeah. So not all big banks also banned from the sanction. I know, like one of the biggest bank. Can't remember the name, but I think Gazprom Bank. So Gazprom Bank is an exception of the sanction. So this is about common sense. Yeah. Hopefully, both countries after this G20 will give a message to them that in the end the world should be united. And I think we are facing very difficult time, and we have to overcome. One of them is to end the war.
Yes, talking about the global food and energy supply chain that has caused a very, very, like a crisis, we can say. So the longer the Russian and Ukraine war, the longer the world, not only Russian and Ukraine, will suffer, as the world has been affecting, among others, global food and energy supply chain, maybe including Indonesia as well, if the war keeps going. So in your observation and calculation, how long the Russia-Ukraine war will last? Maybe you mentioned that it's still a long way to go, but there's also a possibility of peace negotiation. So how is your observation, Your Excellency?
Well, I mentioned already, still far away to go, but there should be common sense. Because the impact, like a total, will be negative to the world economy. And there are some predictions that many countries will get into recession. It is a matter of time. We can say our economy is strong, with more than 5% growth, or 5.2 this year. Some other countries also stay there, but it will affect in any way, because this is something to do with, supply chain of agriculture, something to do with energy. And, the European Union now are suffering even more, especially with the next winter. My friend in Europe, for example, said that the domestic consumption of one family in the past only 100 euros, but now it could reach 7 to 10 times higher. And winter just start coming. So everybody will be suffering. We hope that there will be common sense to all leaders in the world that this is not, this should not be ignored, the impact. And they have to change their initial stances. Because I was in Russia for 4 years and 4 months. Basically, they're loving this country. The people are very nice, unlike what is described by the Hollywood movie. Because a large number of Russian also mixed society, and there are about 140 nationalities in Russia, and big number of Asian also. So in a way, that's why we are also very close with Russia. Now, don't forget, during the Soviet Union, when we would like to take back, Iran Jaya, we got full support from the Soviet Union. We were the biggest military power in Southern Hemisphere at the time. And surprisingly, I met one of the captain of our 12 submarine. So, we had in the past 12 submarines, and 6 of them piloted by Russian. And I met one of them when I was in Russia. So don't forget with the history also that we, had some closest romantic relation during Soviet era. Of course, it's not easy during New Order, but now we come to term again with Russia, and we are still friends with Russia.
Yeah, before we go deeper into the relation between Russia and also Indonesia, as we know that we were talking about the global food and energy supply chain that has been impacted by this invasion. But just before, at the COP27 climate talks, it also addressed that how Russia's invasion is also causing an environmental as well as humanitarian catastrophe. It's a strong word. And do you see how the relation and the impact of it? Because it will impact and affect more countries, not only Russia and Ukraine and their neighbor countries, but also maybe globally.
How do you see on this matter, Your Excellency?
Yeah, that's true. With the war, a lot of programs of renewable energy doesn't work. And now we come back to fossil energy. That's why the demand of coal is very high. It's unprecedented time at the moment because that's the cheapest way for energy. Many renewable energy programs even in developed country does not run as expected. And it is not good, of course, for the long future to use more fossil. I'm not working in coal mining company, and we are happy, with price of coal at the, but at the cost of others, of course, there is something that we are not happy as well. So the longer the war, it will affect our energy security.
The longer the war, it will impact so many sectors.
Yeah.
And as Your Excellency, you mentioned before that before both countries suffered economically, the war will not end. And yeah, we are still optimistic that the war will end. If
Soon.
we are optimistic, and then we are hoping that the war will end really soon.
Yes, and maybe the start can begin at this summit tomorrow. So,
That's the theory. This is the theory, but there is always silver lining in the tunnel.
Silver lining.
Hopefully, the G20 will contribute to the peace of the world.
Okay. Let's put the Russian and Ukraine war for now. Let's talk about the Russia and Indonesia bilateral relations. Your Excellency, how do you see Indonesia's future bilateral relations with Russia and also Ukraine in the future?
Well, I talk specifically on Russia. I'm not expert on Ukraine.
Okay.
I gave you some data in the beginning. During the difficult period, during the pandemic, our economy grew by 40.6%, according to the Russian data from federal custom, which Indonesia enjoyed surplus of 1.9 billion US. This is not a small number. And we are now on the process of signing a free trade agreement with Euro-Asian Economic Union. If there is no pandemic, I'm very optimistic that we have signed already. But because of the pandemic, it will take more time. Maybe hopefully 1 year will be finished. It means that our product will be more competitive. Remember that Vietnam has long signed the FTA. And I once mentioned to former minister at the time of trade, Pak Enggar, that look, there is no way we can compete with Vietnam because they signed the agreement. If they got 0% and we get 18 to 20%, how could we compete? And he was surprised. And then from there, we started negotiation on FTA. And this is a market of 180 million, the biggest in Europe. 5 countries, including, of course, Russia is the biggest one. And our products are very potential. And the number of tourists since I was there, and we organized 4-time festival, very successful festival, supported by the mayor of Moscow. The Russian tourists grew almost 100%, from 60,000, 160,000. And Russia is the biggest spender. And this is very important. This is about quantity, not quality. And in terms of length of stay, number 2. This is in trade. And we have also annual meeting on joint ministerial commission, a bilateral commission, which involves economic ministers. And it has been running so well. And that's, I think that I'm very optimistic that in the future, our relation will be brighter. Because don't forget that, by 2030 or 35, Russia and Indonesia could be the 5 biggest economy in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, militarily, we have also signed some agreement cooperation on military exercise.
Your Excellency, I'm really sorry for cutting you off, but we have to hold the discussion as we are going to look forward to the real-time visual at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport.
No problem.
Yeah, and this one is Mr. President.
This is our President Joko Widodo,
who just landed safe and sound at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport. And let's give our president big appreciation since he attended the ASEAN summit. And then as you mentioned, this is the summit season. And right now, Mr. Jokowi is ready to host the G20 summit that will be held tomorrow and the next day.
Yes, we have to give a very big appreciation and how the effort that the government has put into this G20 Indonesia presidency, especially during this difficult time. We're not really out from the pandemic era. That's why we're still recovering.
True.
We're recovering together, just like the motto of the G20 this year. And despite the Ukraine-Russia war as well that is happening in the other part of the world, so it's actually a challenging time.
All right, so from what we know so far, Mr. President of the Republic of Indonesia just landed at the Ngurah Rai International Airport after doing some activities in Solo, Central Java. Okay, now we are still waiting and we are expecting Mr. President Joko Widodo to step out of the plane and then ready to join the summit or G20 summit.
Here is the plane of the number one person in Indonesia is parking, and just in a few minutes, Mr. President will be walking out the plane, ready to host the G20 summit tomorrow. He just arrived from Solo,
Central Java.
Yeah, such a very busy schedule for our president.
True. Because Mr. Jokowi or President Joko Widodo and then Indonesia's presidency really gave the best effort to like create a positive impression and also positive thing to all the heads of state and also delegates that will gather in Bali at the G20 summit. All right, now we are still waiting for Mr. President Joko Widodo. And speaking about G20 under Indonesia's presidency, there are three main priority issues that Indonesia's presidency bring to the table, namely global health architecture, digital transformation, and also sustainable energy transition.
This is a live visual that is currently happening at this moment at I Gusti Ngurah Rai International Airport here in Bali. We are ready to welcome our President Jokowi, who just arrived from Solo, and to attend the G20 summit that we as Indonesia host this year.
And yeah, as an Indonesian, I'm also excited to see how the G20 summit will be going, since this is the awesome moment and also the fantastic moment that we cannot expect happen in the next year, the next 2 years, and so on and so forth.
It only happens in 20 years.
20 years, so once in a lifetime.
Yep. For us.
For us.
For us both.
For us as well.
For Indonesia, for Indonesia, the country, we will be hosting the G20 every 20 years. But maybe for me, Aisyah Fabian, and Aryo Bagus, in 20 years, we will not be the host.
Yeah, we cannot predict
anymore.
anything. Yeah.
Well, we are still waiting for President Jokowi to step out from the plane.
And Mr. President Joko Widodo has arrived safely at Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport from Solo, Central Java. From what we know so far, Mr. President just inaugurated a mosque, Muhammadiyah Mosque, back to Solo, Central Java.
Just yesterday.
Just yesterday. Such a tight schedule.
Yeah. Because the president himself also checked the preparation and the readiness of G20 summit last week before he left for the ASEAN summit in Cambodia.
Yeah. As long as I know, since I do a lot of field reporting, I came also to the Tahura or the Ngurah Rai Grand Forest Park. I also knew that Mr. President Joko Widodo has do some inspection back at the Tahura mangrove forest to check all the facilities and then all the preparations to make sure that all heads of state and delegates can receive such positive impression from the G20 summit held in Bali.
And we can say that we are 100% ready. This is like day -1 before the summit. And since yesterday, we have declared that Indonesia is 100% the preparation and the readiness to welcome all the heads of state and the delegates to join the G20 summit tomorrow.
True. Not only preparing the security, Bali provincial government and also Indonesia's presidency in preparing the G20 summit in Bali also prepared, penjor decoration stretching from the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport to the venues, and also preparing some other things to make sure all delegates are feeling the vibes of Bali.
So this is minutes until our President Joko Widodo stepped out from the plane, who just arrived from his hometown, Solo. He has a plan. He will, after he retires later, he will go back and just be a regular man in Solo.
Yeah, and this is Mr. President of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Joko Widodo, and Ibu Iriana Joko Widodo.
Where Mrs. Iriana Jokowi just slipped accidentally, and hopefully she is okay.
Yes, we really hope that she is okay. And now we are still waiting for more updates and also visuals from Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport. And as per today, we have a number of heads of states and also leaders of international organizations that landed or that have landed at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport.
Okay, now let's see. This is the live visual where President Joko Widodo and also Mrs. Iriana Joko Widodo greets.
Yeah, greeted by Balinese. All right.
Since Mr. President Joko Widodo has arrived here in Bali and ready to host the G20 summit, we will go back
To the discussion
about how Indonesia and Russia's relation bilaterally with His Excellency Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi, the former Indonesian ambassador in Russia.
Okay, Your Excellency, could you please give us a brief explanation about what is the most strategic sectors in terms of bilateral relations between Indonesia and also Russia at the moment?
We are going to sign a strategic partnership. This is the highest phase of relations between countries, and it will be signed only by leaders of the state. So in this case, President Jokowi and President Putin. We already designed this when I was there, and actually it was about to be signed, but then the pandemic came, and it's not easy to arrange a meeting of these two leaders because of that pandemic. And it is a matter of time when either President Putin will visit Jakarta or President Jokowi will visit Moscow. So the draft, I think, almost 100%. I know there is some changes because of the current situation, but basically both countries agreed to sign a strategic partnership scheme, which is very, very important in the future of our relations, because once that will be signed, there will be more visiting either from G to G or B to B on both sides. And there will be an annual gathering which involves some ministers, like what we have Australia, for example. So let's see that this could be done sooner, and it will bring benefit to our both countries. Because basically, in terms of trade, for example, we are not competitors. We need each other. For example, we need oil, we need wheat from Russia, and also gas for the fertilizer. But also on the other side, Russia needs a lot of us from Indonesia, coffee, cocoa. CPO is still the biggest exporter destination for Indonesia. Footwear, also culinary. Indonesian culinary must be one of those that we have to pursue, because our nasi goreng there has been very famous, satay and so on. Unfortunately, there is not many Indonesian restaurants there compared to Vietnamese restaurant.
Okay, Your Excellency, I know that both countries, Indonesia and also Russia, have their own strength in building the relation. But could you give prediction on what kind of expected sectors that can be built in the future between Indonesia and also Russia?
Well, I think B2B should be more encouraged, and also P2P. Recently, for example, Russia now has become the 10th biggest sources of tourists from to Indonesia. Which I mentioned in terms of spending. Russia is the biggest. And number 2 is people to people. Business to business, of course, with the growing number of trade and so on, but also people to people. Don't forget that from people to people, and then will grow to other sectors like business and others. The number of Indonesians visiting Russia also growing very significantly. We, as I mentioned, we organized the 4th-time festival, and the last festival, 2019. There were 1,000 Indonesian, mostly business people, artists, and also government officials visiting Moscow alone. On the first day, 3 days event. And now in Russia, Indonesian language also has been growing.
Okay.
Even one university, famous university, Kasan Federal University, just opened Indonesian department about three years ago, and we have Batik College in Russia, so people are very much familiar with Batik, with our product, fashion, and so on.
Okay.
These two things, I think, business and B2B and B2B, that should be more encouraged. Apart from the regular basis of meeting between G2G, which has happened already in the past.
Okay, those were the important sectors from the strategic partnership between Russia and Indonesia, especially from the G2G, B2B, and also the people to people as well, because we know we have so many visitors from Russia at the moment, especially with the new visa policy. Maybe with the investment, they can invest in many sectors in Indonesia, not only in Bali, but in every part of Indonesia as well. Maybe that can be a good bilateral relation as well between Indonesia and Russia.
Okay, Your Excellency, could you give, for the last time, could you give a closing statement to sum up our discussion for today regarding to the Russia and Indonesia bilateral relation, Russia and Ukrainian war, and what we have been discussed for today?
And especially how the alignment with the G20 theme this year, like recover together, recover stronger.
Well, this is the longest interview I had, becoming more exhausted. First, I think on the fact that the war is still there, we hope that leaders on both sides will come to terms and more find a practical way to find out the solution. And number one, negotiation is the most appropriate one, and there is something that we can contribute. Number two, the G20, we have to be realistic. That President Putin is not coming, but we don't have to be, nervous, about the unpresent of President Putin, because there are many agendas to be discussed, especially those some dealing with climate change, environment, trade, digital thing, and so on. There are many things that Indonesia could benefit from the G20. Yeah, we have to be realistic that joint communique may not happen, but Indonesia has done the best thing to organize this event. And so far, when I was in foreign minister, also we always successful in organizing any international events, especially now in Bali. And third thing, with bilateral relations, I see a bright future relations between Indonesia and Russia. First, President Jokowi has twice visited Moscow, and we're expecting that next is President Putin visit to Jakarta, and then we will sign strategic partnership. With the strategic partnership, can enlarge our relations involving different layers of the society, from business to business and people to people. We have a strong historical relations between Indonesia and Russia. Of course, we have to admit there's a stagnancy during the border, but now we forget the past. We are coming to the new era of our relations. And thanks also to the personal relations between President Putin and President Jokowi. So I thank you for this opportunity. It is very interesting to discuss this issue with TVRI, and it is my honor also to be the host for this. Thank you, Ken.
We thank you for your time and for sharing your analysis into the Russia's international affairs and how it has the effect with the G20 summit that we will be hosting tomorrow. Thank you once again, His Excellency Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, and that wraps up our discussion with His Excellency Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi, former Indonesian ambassador to Russia. And let's get back to the real-time visual. This is the visual from the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport, as we are looking forward to seeing more visual at Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport. Okay, once again, the security at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport is really tight. So, from what we know so far, also the international airport is restricted to people or the common people.
We have a number of heads of state who will be arriving today here in Bali to join the G20 summit that will start tomorrow until the 16th of November 2022. Scheduled today is the heads of state of Turkey. This is an arrival for Turkey's president.
Yeah, we are still waiting on the next heads of state that just landed. Turkey president just landed safely at the international airport of Igusti Ngurah Rai, Bali.
Turkey also has a good relation with Indonesia and also Russia, as we discussed earlier. And Russia says it will pursue gas cooperation with Turkey and grain export at this summit at G20.
Yeah. As Turkey is one of also the G20 member states that will attend the summit of G20 summit in Bali. And to look more about Republic of Turkey, here is the little or brief explanation about a country.
Turkey, a country with a population of 85 million people, lies on the Anatolian Peninsula in Western Asia and a small enclave in Thrace in the Balkan region of southeast of Europe. The capital of Turkey is Ankara, which sits on Turkey's central Anatolian region and home for 5.6 million people. Turkey got its independence almost a century ago, precisely on October 29th, 1923. Turkey has worked closely with its neighbors and other countries to promote global peace and security. Turkey's political system is based on secular parliamentary representative and the separation of powers. Until the year of 2018, the political party which got the majority of the seats in the parliament during the general elections used to form the government, and the leader of the ruling party became the prime minister, the head of the government. This was changed with a referendum on April the 16th, 2017. With the amendments of the Constitution in 2017, the Republic of Turkey adopted a new presidential system, where the president assumes the executive powers. This means there is no more need to have a prime minister, since the president is ruling the country and picks his own cabinet ministers. So the last prime minister, Mr. Binali Yildirim, was automatically dissolved in June 2018. So Turkey held its public election for presidency and the parliament, and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was elected as a president, and picked his cabinet. The first in the history of Turkey where the president himself picked his cabinet minister.
O gecenin gerçeği şudur. O gece.
The incumbent president of Turkey is Tayyip Erdogan, who was sworn as president for the second term on July the 9th, 2018. President Erdogan was elected president for the first time in 2014 after winning 51% of the total votes during the public election in 2014. Erdogan was sworn in as 12th president of Turkey on August 28th of 2014. Erdogan, who was born in Istanbul in 1954, has been a politician since his young age.
Çok geniş bir coğrafyada kurulmuş, büyümüş ve tarihe karışmıştır. Bir başka ifadeyle devletiyle hemen boy vermiştir.
The Turkey economic growth has been averaging 5.22% from the year of 2005 to 2021 and reached an all-time high of 11.4% in 2021. Inflation in Turkey has been increasing, hitting 85.5% in October this year, and its central bank continued to cut its interest rate, bucking the global trend to tighten monetary policies in the face of global economic crisis. Turkey's central bank cut its policy rate by 150 basis points or BPS in October to 10.5%. Turkey unemployment rose to 11.1% in October from 9.6% in the previous month. The tourism and travel-related business in Turkey helped boost economic growth last year. The number of foreign visitors to Turkey rose to 24.7 million people in 2021, nearly doubling from 2020. But this came in below the peak of 45 million inbound visitors recorded in 2019. Travelers from Russia, Germany, and Ukraine accounted for the most visitors to Turkey last year. Turkey's tourism generated 525 billion Turkish lira from foreign visitors in 2021, up from 327.2 billion Turkish lira in 2020. Turkey is indeed a wonderful tourist destination for global travelers, thanks in part to its architecture and landscape. Among them is the Aspendos Theatre, one of the best preserved ancient theatres. The Patara Beach, one of the longest stretches of sandy beach in the Mediterranean Sea. The Bodrum Castle, one of the best preserved monuments dating back to medieval times. The Blue Mosque, built in 1616, is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Istanbul. In terms of bilateral relations, Indonesia, the world's third largest democracy and the world's largest Muslim population, and Turkey established diplomatic relations in 1950. Turkey recognized Indonesia's independence on December 1949. Both countries have enjoyed extensive cooperations, including on strategic, economic, security, development, and education issues.
Commitment to accelerate Indonesia-Turkey Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement and boost investment relation in infrastructure sector as well as collaboration in construction projects.
In 2017, President Joko Widodo made an official visit to Ankara. Indonesia and Turkey signed two major agreements during President Joko Widodo's visit in 2017. Among them is the healthcare agreement and the launch of economic negotiations to establish the Indonesia-Turkey Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or IT-SEPA. During President Joko Widodo's visit 5 years ago, both countries also discussed strategic industrial development and counter-terrorism issues. In economic cooperation, both countries agreed in 2017 to boost trade volume to more than $10 billion in 2023. Total trade volume between the two countries stood at $1.5 billion. Total turkey exports to Indonesia was valued at $313.04 million in 2021, slightly higher than the $263 million recorded in 2019. Turkey's main exports to Indonesia consist of raw tobacco, carbonates, and borax, while Indonesia's exports to Turkey stood at $1.61 billion in 2021, according to the United Nations Comtrade database. Indonesia's main exports to Turkey consist of, among others, iron and steel, man-made staple fibers, rubbers, animal, vegetable fats, and oils. The IT-SEPA can help unlock the trade and investment potential.
And that was Turkey at a glance. So you will have more insights about one of the G20 members, Turkey.
Yes, and the door is opening
About to
for
open.
the president of Turkey, Erdogan. Erdogan. That's how to
Tayyip
pronounce
Erdogan.
it. It's a little bit hard for us to pronounce the name. And it is confirmed by the Turkish Communications Directorate that the president will attend the G20 summit in Bali. So here he is, just arrived in Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport. And he will hold meetings with world leaders on the sidelines, the summit, which will take place on November 15 to 16.
Yeah, and we are now still waiting, Mr. President, because we are seeing now on the screen that the plane has safely parked at Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport. And I will repeat once again that the security at Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport is really tight, so it is restricted and not open for public.
The president of Turkey, Erdogan, is expected to meet with Indonesian counterpart, our President Joko Widodo. And the two leaders will discuss bilateral relations and steps that can be taken to further develop cooperation, which will be focusing on the priority issues, just like the three main pillars of the G20 Indonesian presidency this year, which are global health architecture, sustainable energy transition, and also digital transformation.
All right. And we are about to see Mr. President of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, that will step out from the plane. All right, and I think this is the moment we've been waiting for, not only for us, Indonesian, but also for all heads of state and also all delegates to be here in the islands of God, Bali.
We are witnessing with minutes to minutes the arrival of heads of state in the Igusti Ngurah Rai Airport in Bali. to join the G20 summit that will be held tomorrow until the 16th of November. So today there will be more
heads of state
that are coming and arrive here in Bali.
Yeah, up until now, last night there are a number of heads of state that also landed last night, such as French and then Malaysia. We have also Mexico, South Korea, Japan, and also United States of America. And earlier this morning, we also have President of IOC landed at the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport. And today we are still expecting more heads of state, as you just mentioned, more heads of state to be landed at the islands of God, Bali. And we are broadcasting and airing live from the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport because we are official host broadcaster for the G20 under Indonesia's presidency.
And the host for the G20 Indonesia presidency, our own President Joko Widodo also just arrived at the airport just a few minutes earlier from Solo.
After inaugurating the mosque, Muhammadiyah Mosque to be specific. Alright, now we are still waiting for Mr. President.
And I believe he will be welcomed with the traditional Balinese dance too. And it will be a warm welcome to the heads of state, to the delegate of the G20 summit.
Okay, let's give you a brief explanation about Turkey. So Turkey, a country with a population of 85 million people, lies on Anatolian Peninsula in Western Asia, and a small enclave in Thrace in the Balkan region of southeast of Europe. The capital of Turkey is Ankara, which sits on Turkey's central Anatolian region and home for 5.6 million people.
Yes, and as G20 is a collaboration between economy countries in the world, Turkey economic growth has been averaging 5.22% from the year of 2005 to 2021 and reached an all-time high of 11.4% in 2021. Inflation in Turkey has been increasing, hitting 85.5% in October this year. And its central bank continued to cut its interest rate, bucking the global trend to tighten monetary policies in the face of global economic crisis.
One of the most interesting facts about Turkey is with the amendments of the constitution in 2017, the Republic of Turkey adopted a new presidential system where the president assumes the executive powers. This means there is no more need to have a prime minister since the president is ruling the country and picks his own cabinet ministers.
And in terms of bilateral relations, Indonesia, the world's third largest democracy and world's largest Muslim population, and Turkey established diplomatic relations in 1950. Turkey recognized Indonesia's independence on December 1949, and since then both countries have enjoyed extensive cooperations, including on strategic, economy, security, development, and also education issues.
And we are now still waiting for the Mr. President. The incumbent president of Turkey is Tayyip Erdogan, who was sworn as president for the second term on July 9, 2018. And President Erdogan was elected president for the first time in 2014 after winning 51% of the total votes during the public election in 2014. And Erdogan was sworn in as 12th president of Turkey on August 20th of 2014.
Well, in 2017, President Joko Widodo made an official visit to Ankara. Indonesia and Turkey signed two major agreements during President Joko Widodo's visit in 2017. And among them is the healthcare agreement and the launch of economic negotiations to establish the Indonesia-Turkey Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, where both countries also discuss strategic industrial development and counter-terrorism issues.
Let's talk about the bilateral relationship during the visit of Mr. President of Republic Indonesia, Mr. Joko Widodo in 2017. So total Turkey exports to Indonesia was valued at $313.05 million in 2029, slightly higher than the $263 million recorded in 2019. Turkey's main exports to Indonesia consist of raw tobacco and carbonates and also borates.
Just like Indonesia, Turkey is indeed a wonderful tourist destination for global travelers, thanks in part to its architecture and landscape. Among them is the Aspendos Theater, one of the best preserved ancient theaters, and the Patara Beach, one of the longest stretches of sandy beach in the Mediterranean Sea, the Ballroom Castle, and one of the best preserved monuments dating back to medieval times.
Listening to all potential of Turkey in terms of tourism sectors, let's go to the Turkey after the summit.
That will be a good idea.
That will be a good idea.
Because in the tourism and travel related business in Turkey helps boost economic growth last year. And it's very, very significant. The number of foreign visitors to Turkey rose to 24.7 million people in 2021. And I believe that there are many of Indonesian tourists who visited Turkey within a year. Yes.
Okay, and aside from the Republic of Turkey, here is the arrival of Senegalese president, the Republic of Senegal. Yes, all the things can or may change in the last minute. So this is the real-time visual from the Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport to give you the latest updates about the arrival of heads of state that will gather at the G20 summit in Bali, held tomorrow and the next day after tomorrow.
this, we are looking at the President of Turkey with the First Lady.
Mr. President Tayyip Erdogan, who just stepped out from the plane and also has arrived and landed in Bali.
Turkey and Indonesia has a good bilateral relation, and on this G20 summit, the President Erdogan with President Joko Widodo will hold meetings with world leaders on the sidelines. The summit that also will discuss bilateral relations and steps that can be taken to further develop cooperation between two countries. And President Erdogan is welcomed with the Bali traditional dance.
And actually, the G20 under Indonesia's presidency will be the best way to promote tourism in Indonesia, especially in Bali.
And President Erdogan is leaving the airport.
And I assume heading to the venues before joining and also holding with fellow G20 member states at a two-day meeting. And we can also see the Minister of Health of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Budi Gunadi Sadikin, and also Mr. Governor of Bali, Mr. Wayan Koster. Yeah, now we are still waiting for more heads of state arrivals at the Ngurah Rai International Airport in Bali.
Today will be coming more and more. There will be like a non-stop arrivals for the head of state to be joining the G20 summit that will be held tomorrow.
Yep.
until the 16th of November 2022.
Okay, and up until now, earlier this morning, we have the president of IOC, and then we have also Mr. President of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Joko Widodo, who just landed a few moments ago. And last night, we also had a number of heads of states, such as French, and then Malaysia, Mexico, South Korea, Japan, and also United States of America that just landed last night at Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport in Bali.
More heads of state are scheduled to arrive in Bali today. Just like Australia, Canada, Spain, Brazil. And in just a few minutes, we will welcome the president of Senegal.
All right, and that wraps up today's edition of Hello G20. I'm Arya Bagus.
And I am Aisha Fabian. So stay tuned only on TVRI World as the official host broadcaster for the G20 Indonesia presidency. After this, we have Newswatch.
Yes.
And you will be accompanied with our colleague, Chok Devi.
And stay healthy. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.
People of the world, we are in jeopardy. Striving times to act in solidarity. Our wish to heal the world, we shall do whatever must be done. We cover together. Recover stronger. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome hand in hand. Recover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching up for our children's future destiny. I wish heal the world. Whatever must be done, we cover together. We'll recover stronger. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome hand in hand. We cover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching up for our children's future destiny. Yes, it's from God's history, taking us ahead. Recover together, stronger. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome hand in hand. We cover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching out for children's future. For children's future.
Mata dunia tertuju ke Pulau Dewata.
Menantikan kebijakan para pemimpin dunia untuk pemulihan yang lebih sejahtera.